Hey there, Robert John Hadfield from Audiomover here again to talk about some classic vinyl. And this right here was a little bit more of an obscure group that came out of the 80s. They had this guy that was the singer and main songwriter named Ron KEEL. And I think a lot of people had huge expectations where this band was going to go, especially Gene Simmons. So Gene Simmons, who of course is the bassist and one of the singers for KISS, produced this album. And I actually saw Gene Simmons on a talk show where he brought Ron KEEL on this talk show with him because he was really pushing these guys and plugging them and thought that this was going to go big. And anyway, really believed in this group. Ron KEEL was, he was a hard worker, we'll just put it that way, and he continues to be. I mean, not only did he have this band, this was their second album, by the way, I think I may have mentioned that. But when this band didn't really go where they wanted it to, he just kept going, and he ended up having a career in like country music for a while, and then he was on the radio, and then he reformed KEEL, and the guy just has really, he's a hard worker, and he just keeps reinventing himself and doing different things, which is kind of awesome actually. So I wasn't a huge fan, but I did buy this album and I liked a lot of stuff on it. And this was one of those, I think I saw him originally in concert, and that's where I first heard of him, I'm pretty sure. And I want to say they opened up for Judas Priest. It was either them or Kick-Axe. Yeah, Kick-Axe, that's an obscure reference. But I think I saw these guys opening it for Judas Priest, and then I saw them headlining at a smaller place in Denver called the Rainbow Music Hall. This has been so long ago, I may not be getting this right, but they were cool, and Ron KEEL was an interesting guy, and they put on a good show as far as that goes, and the music was heavy. So let's flip it over and let's take a look at the back here, and this is Ron KEEL right there in the middle, and then you have the other people in his band. I don't know, the only thing that's kind of interesting about this is that this guy that's the drummer, I can't read his name, I'm old in my eyes, Dwayne Miller. I don't think he actually played on this album. From what I understand, the person actually played on this album, and this is a reference you probably get, was a guy named Steve Riley, who, even though he played on this album, before it got put out, he left and went and started playing with Blackie Lawless and Wasp. So this guy's on the cover, but I don't think he played on this album at all. And so anyway, this is, but what's kind of interesting is the track list, and then once again, who was involved with this. And you'll see right there, if that's in focus, you can see it says produced by Gene Simmons. So this was once again one of Gene Simmons. And Gene Simmons was actually pretty involved with a lot of different groups. I mean, one of my favorite groups from this era too, from the 80s, was a band called Easy-O. And Easy-O's debut album, I'm pretty sure Gene Simmons was involved with him, almost positive he produced that first album with Easy-O. And Easy-O was they were a Japanese band, and they were just awesome. If you love 80s metal that really has a biting edge to it, Easy-O, E-Z-O, that's the letters. Look that stuff up. Go listen to the song House of a Thousand Pleasures. I mean, every song on there is great. Anyway, that's a different story. We'll talk about them another time. Anyway, so Gene Simmons was working with a lot of different groups, and this is one of the bands that he really, really believed in. And so they had the title track of this song, which was The Right to Rock. And that was kind of a typical thing back then, to have these rebellious songs, We're Not Gonna Take It, Twisted Sister. It really grabbed onto this teenage boy angst, kind of, and if you're a teenage boy at the time, frequently this kind of thing spoke to you, and that, me too. So I kind of dug this stuff, and then the rest of the track list, Back to the City, I don't really remember that. If I heard it again, I'd be able to probably sing it to you, because I did listen to this album several times, at least the first side. And then Let's Spend the Night Together, and yes, the answer to your question is that is the old Rolling Stones song. KEEL redid this Rolling Stones song. Easier said than done. So Many Girls, So Little Time. I don't really, like I said, I'd have to listen to it again to remember how these songs went. But it was just heavy rock and roll. Now, this wasn't their first album. This was their second album. The first one, The first one was called Lay Down the Law, and it actually had some a couple of the songs that were on Lay Down the Law made it from that album to this album. Because the interesting thing is, when they went in to record this album, Ron Keel did not have that many songs ready to go. And so, and I'll show you something really interesting here. So, like I said, when they went in to record this album, they only had a handful of songs ready. So they had to pull a couple songs from the first album. One of them was that Rolling Stones cover, Let's Spend the Night Together, and then look what else they did. And hopefully you'll be able to, here's the inside of the record, and hopefully you'll be able to see this clearly. Let's make sure this is focused. So actually, let's close this in so you can see the label. Okay. So look at this right here. See it right there? Easier said than done. Gene Simmons. Of course, Let's Spend the Night Together. Mick Jagger, Keith Richards. But here's my point. They didn't have a lot of music, so they were pulling Gene Simmons songs out to put on this record. Let's see. Here's another one. Get Down. Gene Simmons. And anyway, so my point was they had to, and you see these others were written by Ron Keel, but they didn't have enough songs to really put this record together, so Gene Simmons actually provided some of the music that they put on this thing. So anyway, Gene was, like I said, he was one of these guys that got involved with a lot of different groups, and he was really bought into these guys that they were going to go somewhere, and then they just didn't. You know, they toured a few times and made a little bit of a splash, you know, with a few people and, you know, some kids like me that got into this stuff and that would buy these things. Okay, yeah, there's 2 Gene Simmons songs right there. I didn't even notice it. Easier Said Than Done, So Many Girls, Solo Time. So it looks like there was 3 Gene Simmons songs on this album. And then there was a Rolling Stones songs. That's 4 of the songs on this album that Ron Keel wasn't even involved with. And then the rest of them, it looks like that Ron Keel did. And a couple of them were taken from a previous album. So it was kind of a Frankenstein of different kinds of music on this thing, but it was 80s metal, and it was pretty cool as far as that goes. If you were into this kind of stuff back then and you liked and you liked 80s metal, this was kind of one of those things that you would have dug. And anyway, if you like these videos, please like and subscribe to this channel. Like the video. Leave some comments if there's other albums you'd like us to talk about. I've got thousands of these things, and whether it's heavy metal or whatever it is, we've got so much stuff, and it's kind of interesting talking about the history behind these things. And also, if you have old audio and videotapes that you need to convert to digital, because you probably do, or you know somebody that does, go to audiomover.com and start an order there. Send those tapes in and get them permanently archived so you're not losing them. So anyway, hope you enjoy this stuff, and with that, have a fantastic day.